Gary in Colorado. Hey, Gary, you're live on Truth Wanted. What's up?
Hello, Dan. How are you guys doing this evening?
Doing all right. We're getting a little bit of static on your end, but hopefully if you talk again, it'll have fixed itself.
Okay, is that any better?
Yeah, that sounds a lot better.
Okay, cool. I just moved the cell phone to the window so I have better reception.
Cool.
So, anyway, so you guys doing good tonight? You guys all hunkered down and hiding?
Yeah. We learned earlier that this virus probably isn't real. So this is all a charade and we don't have to do this. But other than that, we're doing just fine. So.
Yeah, that's partially, one of the reasons why I was calling. Mm-hmm. What?
I was joking. Now we're just doing it for fun.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. We're just, crashing the economy and everything else. So, and also, by the way, when I post in the chat, I go off of Colorado Biker Prepper, just to let you know.
Cool.
So people know who they're talking, who's talking. Anyway, I was calling because I kind of wanted to rebut David. The earlier caller who said, no, this doesn't exist.
Right.
And partially to do that, but also I wanted to speak to how a lot of people today, they're really not adept at looking at the information that is presented to them and looking at it, using epistemology to deal with it and, try and figure out what's fact and what's opinion. And because of that, it also leads to politicization of it. People are on one side are saying one thing, people on the other side are saying another thing. And that leads into a lot of confirmation bias sources. There's a lot of people out there that don't do the information, or they don't do the research, or they don't do other sources. They only look at one or two, and that can be really, really misleading. And I think that's what that's what happened to David. I think that he has been looking into this stuff a lot, but he's only been going to certain sources, and those sources are probably very, very biased towards his point of view.
Probably
so. What's your guys' take? I mean, what do you think of that?
So I made a post on my Twitter, and I want to hear Sarah's take on this after I put this out. But I made a post on my Twitter recently saying we really shouldn't be calling people conspiracy theorists. We should be calling them conspiracy allegationists, because that's what they do. They make allegations, they make conjectures. And I saw David making a lot of conjectures. And we can speculate and do that all day, but that doesn't prove or really demonstrate anything as far as the truth value. Notice, like, the way David was investigating this, he said, well, here's this thing. Well, why are they doing this? Doesn't this contradict this? And why are they doing this? Like, yeah, there's a skepticism there, but it's not the same kind of skepticism that you or I might look at things. Immediately, the jump is, okay, how can we theorize what the real quote unquote thing is going on? Because it's almost like the bias is skewed towards the information being presented to us can never be 100% the full story. It's never the full story. We never have the true story.
Well, it's right. Yeah, let me say something real quick. Mm-hmm. It's also the methodology in which the information is presented. You could take two exact things, or you could take one thing and present it in two different ways. How you frame the narrative around it determines what kind of outcome that you will get later. I studied journalism. I studied journalism methodology and ethics. So I've got a little bit of insight into this. But you can take the same story and present it two completely different ways, and it will lead to different results. And if you do not have other sources to compare and contrast it to, then you are going to make that decision that you've been led to.
Yeah, okay. It's a false binary of options, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
and sure. That's where the politicization of this has come in, is because we have already becoming this false dichotomy, this false binary, of left and right, conservative, liberal, whatever. Okay, and that is what is leading people down certain avenues and into certain media outlets. And there's a third one, and that third one is the conspiracy or the alternative media or the alternative viewpoints that usually are even more woefully wrong than the others combined. So
Yeah.
you must keep in mind when you're consuming this media that we're getting now, that some of it may be sensationalized, it may be hyperbolic.
Absolutely.
And the reason that's done is to garner viewership and to garner people to watch so they can maintain their ad revenue for as long as it lasts.
Yeah, and whether we like it or not,
So,
conspiracies are mainstream now. Like, this isn't just a fringe. I mean, it is a fringe group of people who put a lot of this stuff out in some ways, but a lot of powerful people in this country believe in conspiracy theories now and make leadership decisions on a local, state, and federal level. All of it is out there. So it's something that we have to address and engage with. I'm of the ethic that we can't just let this, we can't just let this go by itself. We have to talk about this. We can't slip it under the rug anymore and just call these people crazy and go on with the rest of our days. We're long past that. We have to be more active in our talks about it. But yes, Sarah, I want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I want to hear too.
It's so easy to fall into that cycle of just finding what you agree with. And sometimes, I mean, I definitely fall into this sometimes too. You got to kind of catch yourself, but finding what you agree with and disregarding what doesn't fall into that. And being able to look out for that and catch yourself doing that isn't necessarily a skill that's been taught to everyone, isn't necessarily a skill that everyone has. And that can become a really dangerous cycle.
Yeah,
I would say that most people have never learned how to look at something skeptically, but also, to look at contrary information that disagrees with the way they view things and take on that, yes, they may have a point here. There may be something that discounts the other side, okay, or their own personal viewpoint. And that's part of the binary, this false dichotomy that we've fallen into politically, socially, even economically, things like that. It's pervaded our society so much that people have gotten into a habit of just looking at one side or the other, or completely ignoring, say, a compromise, a middle ground, something else. So we've become so polarized, and that's where people have really, really lost their way, being able to, use the epistemology, figure out what is fact from opinion.
Yeah, I mean, check it out. I grew up most of my life in Waco, Texas. Okay, so the vast majority of people I talked to had the same beliefs I did because I got their beliefs from them. These a lot of kind of right-leaning ideas, things that I don't really hold to be true anymore. But my sources of information were just the people around me, just the public school, just I had teachers who had a certain political leaning, and I probably picked up on that. I picked up on that from my family and friends, and that's how most people are getting their information. It's from other people in their lives. It's not necessarily from news sources that they're scrutinizing every single day, which is why I like to make the social ethic of talking to other people in your real life is the most important thing you can do. It is the most important thing you can do. I can have this show and talk to a bunch of atheists all day, and that's great, but that doesn't do anything for the world. Yeah, well, that's not entirely true, right? We give ourselves a sense of comfort and we evaluate our ideas and we build things from there. But what I mean by that is we're not changing the minds of other people. If they're not looking at this, if they're not seeing this, people whose minds that we might be interested in changing, or at least hearing their points of view from. So yeah, it's important for people to have an active skeptic life, not just, hey, just talk on the internet about this stuff, try to talk to other people in real life, because that's where people are getting most of their information, from other people in real life. I saw an interesting study recently. They talked about this on the Scathing Atheist podcast of people were talking about what, when they thought of specific religions, which person did they think of? Like when they thought of Buddhism, the majority went to Buddha, for example, and maybe some for like the Dalai Lama and some other people, although, but when they talked about atheists, a huge majority of people didn't have anybody. They don't have figures for that. But one that they put was their friends and sometimes family. Was one that they put. So they're listening to us. Like, we're the ones who represent kind of that field, at least for atheism, right? So like, if you want to change people's minds, you're probably might be the only person in another person's life that might have the views that you do. So it's good to just talk about this stuff with other people, not just other atheists. So, Sarah, I think you had something else you want to say, and then we'll go ahead and go to our next caller here.
Talk about it gently.
Well, yeah, I'll just make it short. Sorry, Sarah, go ahead.
Talk about gently because, like you were saying, people are getting their information from other people in their lives, often important people in their lives. So when you're questioning what they're saying, you're not just questioning them, you're questioning their source too, which might end up getting personal for people. Or even if you are just questioning them, wherever they got their source, if they just kind of came up with it on their own, you're still wanting to be sure you're not like attacking them, because that's not going to be productive. It's just going to make people close off. So yeah, just
right. And part of this false dichotomy that we've had going for quite some time with, left and right, A versus B, is that people have really internalized and psychologically taken in and internalized their sources and all that, and they can't look at it objectively when you try and talk to them about opposing opinions and opposing viewpoints, because to them it's not just an attack on their source, it's an attack on them. They've internalized it so much, and it's so much part of their identity that it's become it becomes an attack on them. And then emotionally they won't deal with it. They won't deal with it, and they just stick their fingers in their ear and go la 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 la. And that's really hard to overcome. And I think that's one of the problems that David earlier had too, is he's of a certain mindset and he's just not willing to take on a contrarian viewpoint and to evaluate it honestly, intellectually honestly. So that's a big problem with this.
I don't want to speculate too much on David's psychology, because I don't know him, and that's just one phone conversation. I will say I did see a hint of contrarianism in him for sure. It was like whatever the official story was, again, what's the contrarian take we can bring to this? Because somehow we have to,
and that's part of that
is more valuable than what's really there. So
that's part of kind of a tribalistic, duality, my tribe versus your tribe mentality. You say that it's part of it psychologically, I would say. So, but no, that's about all I had to say. But I would just like to remind people that there's a lot of other sources out there for the media that you consume, and take all of it with a grain of salt. Don't take it for read. Research it yourself. Everybody's locked up in their house now anyway. What do you got better to do? Research your information, where it comes from. A couple good books that I would like to recommend to people is Propaganda, okay, and Crystallizing Public Opinion. Okay, cool. Really good books. I just drew a blank on the author. But if you read those books, you'll really understand how the human mind is susceptible to this information and how it's absorbed, and how you, Edward Bernays, and how you use it, and how your epistemology. They're both by Edward Bernays, and he's considered the father of consumerism culture and advertising as well. So if you read those two books, it'll give you a
the call just dropped there. That wasn't me this time, I promise. Yeah, thanks for calling in, Gary. Thanks for telling us about those books. That's definitely something people should check out if they're interested. I suppose it sounds like you made a pretty compelling argument for this person. Although I've never heard of them, I'd be curious to see what he has to say on media and stuff. But yeah, it's good to evaluate your sources and talk to people about this stuff. Again, I think the main takeaway I have from that call is talk to other people. Don't just be skeptical by yourself, even though that's probably easier to do now more than ever. But, that's just the way it is. Things are never going to be the same. That's just the way it is. Oh, yeah. Thank you, Tupac Shakur, for the wonderful lyrics.